Okay, good morning all. So in the previous class, you have started the concept of enterprises. Okay. So what is enterprise and how to define enterprise. Okay. And how to declare enterprise. So that's what we have seen in the previous class. Okay. So basically what is enterprise? So enterprise means it is a reference type like your class. Okay. So it is same as class. So it is a reference type. So now this interface basically consists of static variables, static and final variables, and the abstract methods and the default methods and the static methods. So as we have seen in the previous class, okay? So interfaces are new reference types. So now basically this interface represents an encapsulation of this constants. So sometimes it consists of class and interfaces and one or more abstract methods so that are implemented by a class. So and this interface does not contain the instance variables. Okay. So interface does not include instance variables. So now it contains the final and the static variables. So as we discussed. Okay. So this interface cannot implement itself. So that what we have to do is we need to be implemented by a class. So you need to take a new class and that class provides implementation for the interface. Okay. So and these methods in interface have no body because it is an abstract method. Abstract means it consists of only the declarations or the header of this method. Okay. So it does not include any body. So only headers are declared. So with the parameters. So if a method takes for some parameters, so that you need to specify. Okay. And it will be followed by the semicolon as we have seen. So and whatever the class that implements the interface has to have the full definition of all the abstract methods, whatever the methods defined in the interface. So there are two methods which are defined in the interface. So these methods should have a full implementation in the uh, class which is implemented. So and this interface can be implemented by any number of unrelated classes. Okay. So with their own definitions of the methods of this particular interface, right? So and different classes can have different definitions of the same methods. Okay. So but the parameter list must be is another class, circle class is there. In a circle class, in a different way you can implement. Okay. So, but the method name is the same, but it consists of different implementations. So, and the interface provides another way of dynamic polymorphism. So, this is a runtime particular. See the previous class. So, but coming to this Java SC8 onwards, now interfaces comes with a new these interfaces also includes default methods. So what is this default method? So that is the method declaration includes the keyword default. Use the keyword default and then provide the method name. Okay. So for example, there is a method called void show this one. So now then include its implementation. So even though interfaces consist of only abstract methods, sometimes you can include the default methods with the implementation with the body. This is the body of the method. Now this is the new feature which was added from Java 8 onwards. Okay. So interfaces now have default methods. And another feature is the static methods. You can also include the static methods. Okay, default and static methods with the full definitions. Okay, you can write the full definitions for these methods. Okay, and these methods are inherited by the class. So that is going to be implemented that particular interface. So like default method, you can also include the static methods. So for example, this is static void. You can write another method, static void display. This is another method. So now include its body. Okay. So these are the two new provisions which were added from Java 8 onwards. Okay. Default methods and the static method with full definitions. Okay. So now another point is the class may override this particular default method also. Suppose if you want to override this default method in a new class. So for example, so let us take this class. So this is my interface. So this is interface one, and this is another class, suppose. So this is interface A, and this is class, suppose. Class B implements my interface A. Okay. This is my class B implements interface A. So here in interface A, there is a default method, suppose. So this default method includes its default implementation here. Now the same method can be overridden here. So you can also override the default method in the class which is going to be implement this particular interface. My class B is implementing this interface A. Okay. So then you can override this show method in the implementing class, that is class B. Okay. Suppose if you want to access this particular overridden method, that is the show method in this particular class. Okay, in this particular class, I want to invoke this show method because this is an overridden method. Okay, here show is there and here also show is there. Now, when the same method is defined in both interface as well as this implementing class, so by default, the implementation of this uh, show method of this interface A will be overridden. Now, if you want to invoke this overridden method from this class B, then what you have to do is use the interface name. Use the interface name. What is the interface name here? A, and then use the keyword so far. As we are aware, use the keyword so far. Dot the method name. For dot the method name. Now this is going to invoke this show version of this interface. Show version of the interface. So this is about these default methods. When you are working with the default methods, you can also redefine. Okay, there is a provision. You can also redefine the default method in implementing class. Okay. So you can also redefine. Redefining means provide another implementation. Okay. For the default methods, provide another implementation for the default methods in implementing class. Okay. So now in such case, if you want to invoke, so now in order to invoke overridden method. What is that overridden method? In this context, our overridden method is show method. So now to invoke the overridden method in implementing class, use that interface name dot super dot method. Okay. What is that interface name? Here the interface name is A here. In our context, the interface name is A, and then use this super keyword. Okay. So this is the super keyword, and then the method name. What is that method name? So that is A dot super dot show. Now this is a call to this overridden method. Okay. So this is the thing, that is an interface includes interface contains one is the default method, and second one static method. Static method with full implementation. With full implementation. Okay. So these are the two new provisions which were added from Java 8 onwards. Okay, this is another important point to remember. Okay. So this is one is the default method, and another one is the static methods. One is default and another one is static. Okay. So now this is the way of invoking this overridden default method in the implementing class. So anyhow, this static class, you know how to invoke these static methods. Okay. So static methods are common for either an interface or class. So that if there is a static method here, so let us take this interface. So I have a static method. Suppose there is a static method display DIS. Suppose there is a static method display here. Okay. So with some default implementation. Okay. So now in order to invoke this static method, so how to invoke the static method? So if it is there in a class, okay. So a static method can be invoked with either a class or interface with the help of the class or interface name. Okay. Suppose if it is there in the interface, is there in the interface name, then use name of the interface, that is a dot display. Okay. So for example, in our example, what is the static method name? DISP. So that you use this a dot display. Okay, to invoke this static method. Now this is a call. Now this a dot display is a call to this static method of this interface A. So these are the two new provisions which were added in this Java 8 onwards. One is the default methods and another one is the static methods. So this is what I have discussed here. So now any number of interfaces can be implemented by a class. Now this fulfills the need for the multiple inheritance. Okay. Now using the concept of these interfaces, we can implement multiple inheritance. Okay. So now multiple inheritance means multiple classes, multiple base classes are there. Okay. So, but using the concept of class, you cannot achieve this. But using interfaces, you can achieve this. Okay. So therefore, the interfaces provide this stoppage of this stopgap arrangement. Okay. So now we will see the example. Okay. So first we see the similarities between this interface and the class. Okay. Now coming to the declaration. Okay. So interfaces are similar to the classes. That is the keyword class you can use to create a class. So, but you can replace this class keyword with the interface keyword. Okay. Class keyword with interface keyword. Okay, use this interface keyword. And coming to this accessibility, so accessibility can be controlled just like a class, like your access specifiers. So public and private and protected. So different access specifiers are there. So these are same as in the case of class. So an interface is declared with the public accessibility. Suppose so it can be accessed by any class in any package. So whereas the one without any access specifier is declared suppose. Okay. So it is accessible to the classes in the same package only. Okay. So just like a class. So similarly, one can create variables as object references of interfaces that can be use the interface. So an interface contains suppose inner classes or master classes. Okay. So and inner interfaces. So because this Java 8 an interface can have full definitions of methods with the keywords default and the static with the modifiers default and static modifiers. So these are the similarities between class and interface. So coming to these dissimilarities between the class and interface, that is the differences. So interface cannot implement itself. Okay, but whereas the class can provide complete implementation. Okay. So to provide implementation for an interface, what you have to do is, so you must take a class and that class provides implementation for the interface. So it must be implemented by a class. So that is the first difference. So interface cannot provide the full implementation. It cannot implement itself. Okay. So it must be implemented by a class. And the second one is an interface can contain only method headers. Okay, that is only abstract methods. So of course, default and static are there, but majority are the abstract methods. Only method header will be there. Okay, so it cannot contain the full definitions on the methods. Okay, so but you have to provide the full definition for a particular method. Okay, a given class that implements. So now in Java 8, modification allows the default and the static method declarations in the interfaces. Okay, so you can provide the default implementations. Okay. So and another difference is methods declared in the interface are implicitly public. So by default, whatever the methods declared inside the interface are implicitly public. Okay. So and another one is an interface does not contain the instance variables. So this is what we have discussed earlier also. So interface does not contain instance variables. Another one is the variables declared in an interface are implicitly public, static, and final. Okay. What are the variables we have declared inside the interface are implicitly or by default public and static and final. That means we cannot modify the variables declared inside the interface. So even though if you are not using the final keyword, by default the variable will be treated as a final. Suppose there is a variable int x equal to 100 in an interface. Later on, I want to modify the variable value, that is x plus plus. Now this will gives an error. Okay, this gives an error, compile time error. Okay, because the variables are by default public, static, and final, so that you cannot modify their values. So that is another important difference. Another one is interfaces cannot have a constructors like classes. Okay, so you cannot declare constructor for an interface. So, but a class can have an interface constructor. Okay? But interfaces do not have constructors. So that is another difference. And next one is interface cannot extend a class. Another difference is interface cannot extend a class. Okay. So, but an interface can extend another interface. So that provision is there. So you can apply inheritance to interfaces. Okay. You can apply inheritance to interfaces, but you cannot interface cannot extend a class. So it can only extend other interfaces. It can only extend other interfaces. So it cannot extend a class. Okay? So now a class can extend only one class, but an interface can extend any number of interfaces. This provision is there. Okay? Suppose you have interface, one interface we have C. Now this interface C extends interface A gamma, interface B gamma, interface D gamma, interface E. So like that. Okay. So an interface C can extend any number of interfaces. Okay. So these are acts as the parents for this interface C. Now this gives a form of multiple inheritance. Okay. This gives a form of multiple inheritance. So these are the some of the dissimilarities between class and interfaces. Okay. So similarities and dissimilarities between class and interfaces. So now let us see the example to illustrate the use of this default and the static keywords. So let us take one example here. So let us declare one interface. Suppose interface A is there. Interface A is there. And similarly, you can also write one static method, static void display. Okay, this is the default method and this is the static method. This is static. Now let us take this is class B. This class B implements interface A. Okay. So suppose if you want to if you want to provide the default implementation for this default method, so you can provide it. Okay. So otherwise, you can use this default methods as it is. Okay. Suppose class B equal to new B. Okay. So anyhow, this default method is there. Then we can write B dot to show here. B dot to show. So now what is this show method? Show will be the default method here. Okay. Show will be the default method here. Okay, so you can use this default method. Suppose Java C. What is my class name? The class name is the intr and demo. So now you can compile this using Java C and run this. Now this is the default method. Okay, this is going to display the result of this default method. So one static method is there here. Suppose this is a static method. So in order to invoke this static method, you can directly use the interface name. What is the interface name? DISP. Okay. So what is the interface name? DISP. Okay. So now using this interface name, so you can invoke this static method. Okay, this is a static. Okay. So a dot display. Now suppose if you want to provide this another implementation for the default method. What is my default method here? So this is the provide show is the default method. Now if you want to provide or override this default method, so you can do it. This is the overridden. The overridden default method. Now suppose I want to invoke this overridden default method show using the object of class B suppose. Now let us see the show is there in interface A as well as in class B. Interface A and class B. Now when you compile this, now the show cannot implement show for the system. This is overridden default method. Okay. So this is the void show. So now this gives compile time error accepting to wake access specifier. So you see by default this is the we can write public. This is void show. So compile this and run this. So this is a overridden default method. So what we are getting here, this is overridden default method. So now what about this default version of interface A? This will be hidden here. Okay. So this will be hidden by this overridden version of show method. Okay. So now if you want to invoke this show default version of this interface A, then what you have to do is use the interface name here and then use so far and then use the method name here. Okay, A dot so far dot show. Now this is going to invoke the default version of this interface A. So when you compile this, so I'm done. Now this is the default method. This is a default method, and this is the overridden default method, and this is the static method. Okay, this is the static method, right? So this is about the use of this static and the default keywords, static and the default keywords with respect to this interfaces. Okay, this is a new provision so provided by Java Standard Edition 8 onwards. Okay, so this is the example program which illustrates the use of this default and the static. Okay. And next, let us see how to work with these interfaces. Okay. How to work with these interfaces. So, you know how to define an interface and how to implement an interface. Let's see extending interfaces. extending interfaces. That is inheritance of interfaces. Okay. This is the inheritance of interfaces. That is how to apply inheritance to an interface. How to apply inheritance to interfaces. So like classes. So for a class, how can you apply inheritance? So like classes. So what we can do is, so you can use the keyword extends. You can use the keyword extends to apply inheritance. To apply inheritance to an interface. Okay. So for example, let us take interface A is there. So now it has some body like this. And let us take another interface. B extends A. Somehow it has their own members like. Okay. So these are the two interfaces. So this is one interface A and this is interface B. Now interface A is there and interface B is there. Now interface B extends interface A. Now for example here, so one variable is there, int one static variable is there, and one method is there here. Okay. Now when you apply this extends inheritance, now the members of this interface A will be available in interface B also. Okay. So like the concept of classes. Now these are the two members of this interface A. Now these two members are also available in interface B also. So when you apply the keyword extends, now acquiring the properties of this interface A into interface B. Okay. So now unlike classes, so if it is a class can extend only one interface, at most one class. Okay. So, but if you consider interface, so an interface can extend multiple interfaces. So, unlike classes. Okay. So, for example, there is an interface. A is there. So, it has its own body. Interface B is there. So, it has its own body. Interface C is there. So, it has its own body. Then there is an interface called D. Now this interface D extends. So interface A comma interface B comma interface C. Okay. So now it has its own body like this. Okay. So this is the provision for interfaces. So which is not there for the concept of classes. Okay. So interface A, interface B, interface C. Now, for example, you illustrate like this: A, this is B, and this is C, and this is D. Okay. So this is interface A, this is interface B, this is interface C. Now this is interface D. Okay. So now D extends A and D extends B, D extends C. Okay. So now these three interfaces, A, B, C, are acts as the super interfaces for D. Now this is a form of multiple inheritance. Okay, this is a form of multiple inheritance. Okay. So now this is point number two. This is point number one. An interface can extend another interface, and an interface can extend multiple interfaces. Okay, multiple interfaces. So now let us see one example for this. So this is the interface A, suppose. Now in interface A, I have one variable that is double A comma B. This is one interface. And let us take another interface. Another interface B extends A. Another interface B extends A. Now here we can write one method void add. Void add this one. Okay. Void add. So now in class B, now let us take another class C implements, suppose class B implements class B. Now here I am trying to write one method, the implementation of this add method. Now this is going to perform addition of this A and B. Okay. So now let us create object for this class CC equal to new C. Now C dot A is 100 and the C dot B is 200. Then C dot add. Okay. So now the variables A and B are there. Now A and B are inherited into interface B. Now interface B consists of one method that is void add. When I extend B to A, now B acquires A and B also. So that the members of this interface B are, so this is variable A and variable B, and next one is the one method add method. Okay. So now the class provide implementation for this method that is add A plus B. Okay. So now when you compile this, so A comma B, then expected. ENT or some spelling mistake will be there here. Interface A and interface B. Okay. So these are by default A equal to 100. Suppose B equal to 200. Okay. A equal to 100 and B equal to 200. So this is we should include this public void. Public void add method is there. So it is going to be invoked. Okay. So when you run this, now addition of these two variables, that is A equal to 100, B equal to 200, that is A plus B. Okay. So now these two variables are inherited into interface B, and interface B has its own method, that is add method. It will be implemented in class C. Okay. So this is interface A and interface B. And similarly, an interface can extend multiple interfaces. An interface can extend multiple interfaces. Okay. For example, this is interface A. So here let us declare one variable I is equal to 3.14. And another interface B is there. Now in interface B, let us declare another variable. radius r equal to suppose 12, double r equal to 12. Okay. Now let us take another interface again. Third interface. Now interface C extends A comma B. Interface C extends A comma B. Now here you can write one method public void area. Write one method called public void area. Now let us take one class C implements interface. Let us take class, suppose circle. My class name is circle implements class C, interface C. Now what is there in C? Now C extends A and B. Now interface A consists of one variable Pi and interface B consists of one variable R. Now C interface C includes this Pi and R and one method, abstract method, that is void area. Void area method. Now we need to provide the implementation for this area method. Now area is equal to that is Pi star R star R. Okay, that is pi R square. Okay. So now using this class, what we can do is, so create object circle. Circle C is equal to new circle. Okay. Circle C is equal to new circle and C dot area. C dot area. So here you have three interfaces A, B, and C interfaces. Three interfaces are there, and one class that is circle is going to provide implementation for interface C, and then add a public void area. So the implementation of this method will be pi r square this. Okay. So this is the way of extending multiple interfaces. Interface C extends interface A comma interface B. Okay. Now let us see this, compile the code and run the code. Now you got pi r square, that is 452.15997. That is 452.16. Okay. So this is the way of implementing, that is extending multiple interfaces. Okay. So now we will see the more general form of this interfaces. That is the third variant. That is the third form of this interface usage. Okay. So now in the third case, so an interface can extends another interface or multiple interfaces. An interface can extend another interface or multiple interfaces. Okay. Similarly, if we apply this, a class, now a class can extends another class and implements multiple interfaces. Okay. Implement multiple interfaces. Okay. So for example, if you have one class, suppose class E is there. Now class E extends class B and at the same time implements interface A comma interface B comma interface C. Okay. So now it has its definition of these interfaces. What are our interfaces? Interface A, interface B, and interface C. Okay. That is class E extends the class D, where D is a class, and at the same time implements interfaces A and B. Suppose this is interface A, interface B, interface C, and this is one class D, and this is another class E. Suppose this is one class. What is this class? E, and this is also a class. What is this class? D. This one. Okay. Now this is an interface. This is interface A. This is another interface B. Now this is another interface C. This one. Okay. This is another interface C. Interface A, interface B, interface C, and one class D is there. Okay. Now when you extend this E, now E implements A and E implements B and E implements C and E extends D. E extends D. Now, in this case, now all these classes and interfaces acts as the super classes or super interfaces. These are all acts as super and this E as sub. Okay. Now, this gives a form of multiple inheritance. This gives a form of multiple inheritance. Okay. So in this way, you can provide implementation of the multiple inheritance using interfaces. Multiple inheritance using interfaces. This is the more general form of this class definition, class syntax. Okay. So one class can extend another class and at the same time implements multiple interfaces. So this is a form of implementing multiple inheritance using the concept of interfaces. Okay. So now finally, let us see one example before closing this. Now let us take this is one interface, suppose the public void add index comma invert. Now interface A has one method. Let us take. Now interface B another method, that is sub. Okay. So two interfaces, and let us take interface C also. This is interface C. Let us take one method multiply. Now let us take one class, suppose here. Now class D. Now class D. Class D has one method void division double x comma double y double x comma double y. Now provide the implementation for this. Okay. Control C and Control V here. Double. This is the division. So division is, so what is this? X by y. Now this is the class. Okay. This is the class. Now let us take one class. What is that class? So let us take one class E. This class E extends Now control C. This is addition. Is so what are variables here? X plus 1. Okay. So addition is X plus Y. So this is the one method of this interface A. Similarly, interface B. Interface B has one method that is subtraction. So write this subtraction is this is X minus Y. And interface C consists of one method that is multiplication. So here the multiplication is X star Y. Okay. Multiplication is X star Y. Now close this method, and close this method, and close the class. So this is the full implementation of the class. Okay. So here interface A. So one method is there, and in interface B, another method is there. Interface C, another method is there. Now class D, anyhow it is a class, you can provide implementation for this, right? Now class E, so extends this class D and at the same time implements A, B, C. Now providing full implementation for this. Now in the main what you have to do is let us create object for E equal to new E. Okay. Now E dot add and invoke add method and E dot subtract. E dot subtract and E dot multiply. So because the class E consists of all the numbers. Okay. Now E dot division 12 and 3. Okay. Now this is the full-fledged implementation of this multiple inheritance. Multiple inheritance. Okay. So now let us compile the code Java C and then run the code. Now this is the addition, subtraction, and multiplication, and this is division. Now this is the full-fledged implementation of this multiple inheritance. Okay. So this is how we are going to provide the concept of multiple inheritance using interfaces. Okay. So this is the thing about the interfaces. Okay.